Hello, hello, welcome everyone. So happy to have everyone here today. All right, so I think we can get started here. Hey, Meg. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Lucas Alvarez. I'm here with Meg Link again, and together we're hosting November's AIGA Atlanta Insider. We both are in the in-house committee, as some of you know, for the Atlanta chapter. And I'm currently working at G&A, a sustainability consultant, helping companies navigate their way to sustainability.
And I'm a freelance designer who's worked in-house for many years.
Awesome. So we have a great interview here today for you guys with Britt Davis. So little background, Britt has had the opportunity to work in various creative projects in product design, print, UI, illustration, and identity. So basically everything here. Britt has also been working in professional sports and entertainment in Atlanta since 2015, most recently as a digital media manager for AMB Sports and Entertainment. In 2020, she co-founded something called The Locker Room with Kayla KP Pettis, a creative content platform and unique collective of personalities connected through design, culture, and sports. As part of their passion for service, their time, talent, and resources are used to fund community programs and educational opportunities that bring awareness across the creative careers. The goal being to uplift the next generation of creative minds and elevate minority-owned and operated businesses. Really cool stuff. Truly, she's an inspiration and proof of what you can accomplish with a career in graphic design. So before we dig into our conversation with Britt, we want to thank our Atlanta AIGA in-house committee, as always. We're small but mighty. And if you work in creative in-house, or even if you have a vested interest in in-house and want to get involved, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm the chair of the board and the best person to contact. I'd be happy to give you some more information about how you can partake or anything you'd like to get involved with here at AIGA Atlanta. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Amy for our Market Minute, see what's going on in the community.
Hey everybody, Amy Mangan with Robert Half, Marketing and Creative, and I'm excited to share the November Market Minute with you. So we've got some data these are national numbers, but it's really reflective of what we're seeing here locally in Atlanta. And for a while there, I feel like every month I was sharing with you a new company announcing their move, or at least putting a corporate headquarters or a hub in Atlanta. That sort of slowed down heading into Q4 a little bit, although I expect you'll start to hear more things heading into Q1 again. But I want to share with you these jobs reports that just came out. These are numbers from October, and payrolls increased a ton in October. Unemployment decreased a ton again. So the national unemployment rate is 4.6%. The Atlanta specific, Metro Atlanta unemployment rate is 2.5%. So it's about half of what we're seeing nationally. It's pretty crazy. And not only that, but in the blue box, you'll see quit rates in the middle. So national quit rate increased to a series high of 2.9%. Almost 3% of people are quitting their jobs. Well, guess what? In our little peach in the corner, I made that graphic, by the way. I'm very proud of it. It's pretty terrible. I'm sure the designers have something to say about it. I'm joking. But anyway, the quit rate in Georgia is like double. It's 4.2%. So we lead the nation in Georgia in people quitting their jobs proactively. That doesn't mean they necessarily have another job lined up, or they don't. It's just that they're putting a notice and quitting. So that's pretty crazy. Georgia is the state at the top of the list. And then also that translates nationally, though, over 4 million people leaving their jobs last month, and 6.3 million people were hired last month. So it's pretty incredible stuff. When we're looking at unemployment rates in our industry, though, in the creative and marketing space, I mean, really, it's about a 0.5 percentage point unemployment up to about 2.5%. And that's sort of the range that we're seeing. On the next slide, Robert Half has done some research about what we're seeing in terms of end of year hiring and the demand for that. 2021 has absolutely been the year of full-time permanent jobs open in the creative and marketing space. It really has, which is a great thing for the economy. But we're starting to see more of a trend in the end of the year, which is typical of more companies requesting contract and freelance. And that also is what we're seeing, locally in Atlanta in the creative space too. So almost 3/4 of companies are saying they're planning to bring in seasonal end of year workers. Now, when we hear that, we obviously think of the retail and like Amazon delivery space, but this is also in the professional services space. So I think a lot of companies know that their folks are planning to take time off. On average, it's 7 days at the end of the year. And it's really important in terms of retention for companies to give folks the ability to actually check out and not do work when they're on their paid time off. So the only way to do that now with some of these teams that are running extremely lean is to bring in freelancers. And a lot of companies are doing that right now so that they can, shift brand guidelines, get somebody kind of onboarded, so to speak, and then push pause and have them on hold for the holiday work that seasonally may come along as the rest of the team is taking time off. So yes, we're starting to see contract and freelance work heat up again. And that is pretty much it for me. On the next slide, just a quick shameless plug. We're doing Let's Talk Turkey with AIGA next Thursday at lunchtime. It'll be a free webinar where we're going to be highlighting creative and marketing hiring and compensation trends heading into 2022. There's an entire section on DEI hiring, perks and benefits, and also just general national trends of what we're seeing in the hiring market. And Courtney just mentioned, yes, I want to put a plug in for Courtney, who made this beautiful turkey graphic that I'm obsessed with. So if anyone has any questions or wants to hear more about any of the research or data that I shared with you today, feel free to connect with me, and my contact info is on the next slide. And I have a QR code now, so feel free to grab that and get a hold of me that way. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Lucas. Thank you.
Awesome. Great stuff. Crazy to hear that we're at the top of the charts of quitting. That's interesting. So, but there's plenty of jobs out there. So that's fantastic to hear. So without further ado, Britt, I'd love for you to come on. Hey, Britt.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Welcome. Yep.
All right, perfect.
Awesome. I'd like to apologize. That's supposed to be an extra T there. We know how to spell your name. So
All good, all good.
So anyways, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure discussing your journey and accomplishments so far on your design career. Just for some additional background I'll give for everybody, you got your BFA in industrial design actually at North Carolina State University before moving to get your MFA in graphic design from SCAD. So after designing for some iconic brands such as ESPN, SB National, and NASCAR, to say just a few, you moved full-time position into professional sports arena as a digital media manager with AMB Sports and Entertainment, and recently began your own content creation as a founder of Locker Room, which is really cool. We're going to talk a lot about that today. So today we want to talk a little bit more about the importance of moving fluidly into these new roles as you've done in the creative industry, and how it can lead to some really cool, surprising results. So with that, Britt, I'd love if we could talk a little bit about your background in schooling at first and how you got involved in the sports industry after starting out in industrial design.
Yeah, so I think for a lot of creatives, we start with like Lego. Like I still do. I have like 4 boxes right
Me
below
too.
stuff that I need to put together. But that's what really started me thinking about industrial design. But
Cool.
as a kid, I'd always just loved working with arts and crafts and my hands, and really started in fine arts. I did a lot of painting, a lot of drawings. But the other thing that really kind of connected me to the sports aspect of design was East Bay Magazine. So my family had a subscription, and I would always take the magazines, redraw all the shoes, redraw all of the sweatshirts and stuff, and kind of start recoloring and redesigning them, how I would envision them. And that's how I really started thinking about, I wonder if I could actually do this for a living. So my art teacher actually gave me this article on a designer, an industrial designer. He said, you know, you like designing shoes and you like, you know, designing electronics, you know, maybe you should think about industrial design when you go to college. And so from there, you know, I told my parents, like, this is what I want to do. They're like, what is that? We thought you were going to be an architect. I was like, well, I really don't like math, and architecture is all we really knew at the time. So I got to go to NC State's summer camp for a week and try out industrial design and the other programs. But that really solidified, you know, this is what I want to do. Like, I love sneakers. I love building stuff with my hands, seeing how things work on the inside. And went there, got the degree, was trying to set myself up to get in good with Nike and Adidas. And of course, everybody was trying to do that at the same time. So it was just really tough to get into the door. But, you know, I kept sketching, and meanwhile was doing like freelance projects on the side while I was in college. So I did a lot of club flyers. I did a lot of posters, t-shirts for on-campus programs and departments. And that kind of helped me create this portfolio and open up some opportunities to get an on-campus paid job with what's called the Union Activities Board. So they handle all of our concerts, all of our big promotional events that we do on campus. And they took us to a conference in, I think this was Nashville, Tennessee, for student unions and programming departments. And I connected with some folks at UNC Charlotte who were building a new student union and trying to build out a team. So made some connections there. You know, they saw some of my work that was on display for a competition and really liked it. So I saw that they were hiring a couple months down the road. This was like, I think, December going into my senior year, and I was getting ready to graduate in May. So I interviewed with them during my spring break and showed them a lot of the work that they had seen in Nashville at that conference. And when I think it was my last week, wrapped up my final exam, and on the last day of my senior internship, they called me, offered me a job. So I graduated that Saturday, and then that next Monday, I moved to Charlotte to start my career as a designer.
Wow, like happens like that. Yeah, back to connections, that making sure to participate in things like that, competitions to get your name out. And I think that's really cool, the connection between industrial design and graphic design. I think there's a lot more that I was actually, just a side note too, always interested in industrial design. Similar, started with Lego, and there's just so many similarities, just product design versus graphics. Obviously there's different things, but there's a lot of strengths that can blend together.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, cool. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I say it's cool too, just because with industrial design, like, I was able to really learn a lot more about materials and research, and that research kind of started to carry over. It's very helpful, especially when I started graduate school. So I had a nice base idea of how research plays a role in education, and then how it rolls over to what we do in our projects.
Very cool. That leads perfectly into this question I have for you about some of the design strengths that you got from not only your MFA, but your industrial design background. So like, can you give us a little more about some of those strengths? I mean, research being a great one, and anything else?
Yeah, so in industrial design, like, because we, you know, designing products, especially for the program that I was in, we would always have to start with kind of the problem, you know, like, what's the problem? And we would have to research that problem. So we would approach it through, you know, interviews with the potential audience, looking at materials, cost, pricing, like all these different factors that are going to play into our overall, you know, solution. So it wasn't like, here's the problem, and then you just pop up with the product. Like, our professors were very, they emphasize the importance of utilizing your problem solving, but leading it with research. So by the time I got to grad school, we spent more time, I think, researching and reading than we actually did, you know, designing, which was at first kind of like, oh man, you know, I thought I was going to really be hands-on designing, but it really turned out to be like my favorite part, and still my favorite part. So even when I do stuff with Locker Room, we always start with that research. So, you know, I was able to utilize some new tools. Mood boards are like one of my favorite things to do when researching, because when we start that, not only does it give us a nice framework, but it helps us communicate with the client or whoever's going to be utilizing our product or solution. to make sure that we're on the same page visually, because what we may see as bold and bright, they may not see it as that way, or the things that they communicate to us that they want, we may interpret it different. So by having this visual cue that we can both reference and build from, we just know we're on the same page when we're moving forward. And there's no, oh, well, you did this direction and, you know, we don't like it. Like, we try to be as clear as possible with that research. And then I think the other thing that really kind of helped from grad school that we learned about was this idea of lateral thinking. So kind of indirect creative solutions to problems. So one example was we had to kind of get a group of people together to kind of problem solve, or how would they view their department. And the department was at UNC Charlotte, and it was the Multicultural Leadership Organization. So they were kind of rebranding. So what we did was an exercise with Lego of using these tools. How would you communicate what your department is about? And they were able to kind of build on each other's projects and interpret each other's builds and projects to kind of come up with this solution for what the department means to them. But instead of, you know, using a whiteboard or sketching, we use Lego. So that was just kind of a practice for how we would use lateral thinking to kind of come up with a creative solution that was kind of different from anything else that department or any other department had done. So.
That's really cool. Yeah, I love that idea of like mixing mediums to create inspiration. Like, it kind of opens up your mind, like Legos. It lets you get in a different kind of mindset, like a play mindset. It's like, oh, I can be creative in a new way, or just in the way that you like, and some new solutions come out of that. So I think that's really cool. I also find it the inspiration board. I call it inspiration board, mood board, whatever you want to call it. I think to talk a little bit about that. I think that's a really important part. I think, as you're describing, obviously, to connect people on this same kind of idea. I'm curious how you do your mood boards. There's so many different ways. You know, I've put collections of images I found from Pinterest to different various research that I've scanned and just put it in a PDF. But how do you do it? What are some ways that you share your inspiration?
So typically on the locker room side, like when Kayla or KP and I have a call with a client, we'll kind of just highlight some notes or keywords that are called out to us from the client. So for example, if, you know, they're a sneaker brand, you know, they're, you know, this is where we're from, and these are the things we like about our city. It's, you know, it's connected, it's dynamic, it's vibrant. We'll write down those words in conjunction to their bigger brand. So what we want to try to avoid when looking for resources, visual resources for our boards, are like sneaker logos or anything that's too direct to what we're going to be working on. We try to look at more organic, deeper aspects of that brand to kind of pull from. So again, the whole idea is when we have this mood board completed, it represents the tone and mood of that brand, but not showing anything that's been done before. So we'll pull images from like where they're from, or we'll type in like vibrant, and, you know, maybe it's some kind of shimmering light, or maybe it's something really abstract that just catches our eye. We don't know if we're going to do it yet, but it's just captivating. So we'll hold that, and we kind of categorize those things, call them out with the tags that they've actually pulled from their discussion, so that they know the reference point. And then we start kind of labeling those mood boards. So they kind of get like option, you know, A, B, C. And they say, okay, I like this gritty city mood board, or I like this more vibrant lights mood board. And we take the bigger themes from those boards, and that's how we start to kind of drive our direction. But it's typically some images, some, you know, type samples of signs that we may have seen. Sometimes it's texture. And then from all those things, we extract color. We'll extract the type of lettering and type we want to use for their logo to kind of help set that tone. And then the more we extract, we kind of start having these visual tools to kind of play with. And then that's when we kind of get into the design phase.
Very cool. That's super smart. Yeah, connecting not just the imagery and doing it very high level too. So you're not like replicating something. It's more of just an inspiration, which is what it should be for sure. And the other thing that I thought was interesting, so about that, when you send that to them, are you sending it to them and then have like a conversation about it, or you just send and see what they say immediately?
We'll have a conversation. Like, we always present it to them, but we always walk them through it as well, because sometimes, you know, I may put way too much on a mood board. Like, I think KP is actually on this call, so she's probably like giggling, but I'll be like, we have to put all the things in the mood board. And, you know, she's really good at kind of, well, let's pull some of it back so we don't overwhelm the client. But at the same time, we want different things to look at, because we want them to be inspired and visually, you know, stimulated and excited too, because they're part of this process as well. And, you know, everyone will say, well, I'm not a creative, or, you know, I won't know it until I see it. We want to put something in front of them that's going to start sparking some ideas, so that they start thinking like a creative, even if they feel like they've never, you know, had that creative insight or, you know, thinking.
Yeah, and it's really important, obviously, because when you're creating brands and graphics that represent somebody, they have to feel that too. So if they don't, if you just share something, it's like, I don't know, you know, yeah, you can just go run around in circles for a long time. It just really connects them into it. Very cool.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to avoid. Like, we have a very coach mentality with, you know, how we approach our clients, and that's kind of part of the tie into like locker room and sports and how we do this. But we want to make them feel like they're part of our team, but also kind of coaching them so that when they work on future projects, be it with us or, you know, anybody else on the creative side, they're a little bit more empowered to kind of know the language and how the process works.
Totally. Very cool. One more question on this. So kind of past the inspiration. So once you get past that and you're all on the same page and had good conversations, we talked a little bit about rapid prototyping and how valuable that is. How does that kind of fit into the next phase?
Well, it's like, I can't remember where I heard this, but, you know, the whole fail fast mentality. So it's just like being able to quickly get through ideation and how things are going to work and what's not going to work. Because, you know, at the end of the day too, you know, it's a business, you know, that we're running, and that, you know, that time and money, you know, all those things are connected. So always kind of being on, and that's why those mood boards and those setups and processes really help us kind of stay on task, so we're not spending 2 weeks on something that we can condense into a week or even a couple of days reasonably, without really taking away from the quality of the end product. So that just being able to fail fast, learn from it, know what to look for, and then, you know, moving on, so we can actually get more ideas and testing through without really, you know, like I said, compromising that end product or that end solution.
Yeah, the quality overall. And I feel like there is a challenge with rapid prototyping too, not to do it or anything, just when to share a certain iteration with a client. Because I feel like sometimes, like, clients, you share something and you're kind of in between, and they get stuck on it and they're like, I have to have that, or they're like, this isn't the right direction, and you're like, it's just a start. So like, how do you share those prototypes?
I mean, sometimes we just kind of have to read our energy, making sure that we're confident in the idea, because we've been doing it long enough to where we know how to expect those reactions. Even when we have earlier calls with the client, we can anticipate some of the things they're going to ask, or anticipate their personality and how they react to some of the things we're just throwing out before we even get started. And if they get really excited about stuff early on, we're like, okay, we'll pull back from that client a little bit before we really show them something that's not developed, because then they'll want to stop and then just go into that solution. So it's really taking time to understand the client, kind of read into personalities a little bit, and then again, pivoting the same way we pivot for jobs or career. You know, we pivot around, you know, our clients, because they're all very, very different. So you have to, as a designer, just being able to maneuver around those personalities and read into that stuff, so you don't get in a situation where you don't even get to the solution before they're ready to just like, oh, you know, this is it, this is the one. And then down the road, they have something that actually doesn't really work. And now, you know, you don't want that to be a reflection on you or your brand or your process.
That makes total sense. Very cool. Really great advice. So all comes down to communication and making sure you're in contact with who you're making the product for.
Yes.
That's great. So Okay, cool. So now moving on a little bit past, so we got a little bit of your background about how you started and your career choices. So let's dive into locker room. So we know you have a passion for sports, but even more so, you've used it to create incredible design that connects the community in order to make real positive impact, which is super cool. So with that said, let's dive a little into that and talk about what the purpose is of locker room.
Yeah, so when we first started, it was like we wanted to create this platform of just a place to put all of our ideas, but also recognizing that our combined experience and our combined stories, and even the dynamics of how different we are as creatives. And when I say we, I speak of myself and KP, of like, we have a really cool story to share through our work, but also through our individual journeys and how they kind of brought us to this place of working in sports. That was kind of the idea, or this dream that kind of formed differently for each of us. And so we said that, well, we can get people's attention through our work and kind of use our work as a platform to kind of tell these stories about what it's like working in sports, or what's important to us from a cultural aspect. Like when we do our work, we may represent our hometowns. Like I'm from North Carolina. She's from Chicago. We both love sneakers. She was an athlete, I was in marching band. So it's like just these different dynamics of what brought us to this same place and time to kind of connect. And also wanted to use those same projects and ideas and designs to create funding for education opportunities. Like, I went to design camp as a kid, but not all of those things are accessible to, everybody else, be it, from location or, from a money standpoint. So we said, well, we can pour some of those resources into supporting, a kid that wants to go to camp, or maybe they want an iPad or an Adobe subscription, or maybe they're a college student and they just want to get some real world opportunities and work. And we mentor them and, contract out real projects for them. So it's like we're bringing in these things and just kind of pouring back, a little bit of what was poured into us. People, mentored us, scholarships, all these other things. It's like, well, why don't we do that? Creating more awareness for creative opportunities, and thinking about, if you did want to work in sports and entertainment, you don't have to be the person dribbling or throwing the ball, or on stage or anything like that. You could be behind the scenes. There's a lot of really awesome opportunities behind the scenes too. So communicating that to young creatives as well as their parents, so that the parents understand, what the opportunities are. So, like my grandmother and, family had always been super supportive of me. So, using some of their stories and some of their support to kind of also help parents understand like what opportunities are out there for these fields, and whether it be sports, entertainment, or just design in general.
Very cool. Yeah, it's an awesome platform, and I've been doing some really cool stuff. So on the platform, let's talk, like, what are the mediums you guys use the most with Locker Room? I mean, it's an Instagram, but they also have your website. And so what are the mediums and why? Yeah.
So, I mean, well, yeah, Instagram, but like, as far as like the project mediums, like the one that actually took off for us the most has been sneakers, custom sneakers. And it's funny how when we started Locker Room, like how it's grown and, fluctuated in all these different directions, but all for the good. With the sneakers, what really started was with KP. Like, I learned all that from her. We're both sneakerheads. We both have always loved sneakers. Like, I would always just customize more so on a digital platform because I was always afraid to paint on my shoes. But KP, being more hands-on, had that experience of customizing and designing sneakers. And it's actually kind of how we connected before we actually met in person. So every year Nike has this thing called Air Max Day. It's March 26th, and it just commemorates when their first Air Max line dropped. And so I had just done a quick sketch, and I tweeted it, and I was like, "Happy Air Max Day." And Kayla responded to it, and it's like, "Oh yeah, Air Max Day. I think I'm gonna make one as well." And she's a big fan of Rugrats, and so she had done one in a colorway of Chucky from Rugrats. And so every year we would kind of commemorate on social media with these little customized sneakers from our favorite Air Max line. And so it kind of came to this moment where someone's like, hey, this basketball team is looking for people to customize shoes for their team. And we want it to be centered around social justice. And we want to kind of highlight, it was a WNBA team. We want to highlight women who do this. And so, they thought of us. So, and that team was the Seattle Storm. And so they sent us their shoes and we worked on them. And I think it was like 12, ended up being like 12 or 13 pairs total. And they were all different. So, we're trying to plan the themes of the shoes for each player. We're trying to map out the logistics of how much time we can spend on each sneaker and get them to them. And this was also, 2020 when they're all playing in like the bubble in Orlando. So trying to get the shoes shipped and everything, it was wild.
Yeah.
And long story short, it turned out great. We got a shout out on like ESPN, a couple write-ups, and they were all for a good cause, and they were able to raise, like thousands of dollars for their initiative. And we got to do that, with them again this year. And, that fail fast and that rapid prototyping and that thinking, all the things we learned from last year in our past endeavors, led up to that moment. So sneakers really became this platform for us. And so we've been able to commemorate different events using sneaker art, be it again like hometowns or celebrating the spaces that we've created in, like the gathering spot here in Atlanta. We did like a pair for them just to commemorate their birthday, their 5th birthday of their launch. And that's like just opened up all these really cool doors for us, not just to do sneakers, but just other projects centered around that culture and broader spectrums of creative projects and branding. So now we kind of want to use that to teach kids about creativity and art, just through sneakers, because everybody loves sneakers.
Yeah.
They're cool, they're fun. So.
And Britt, can I jump in for a second? We have a question from Terrence who wants to know, how long does the process take to customize the sneakers? It just sounds so interesting.
Yeah.
So the first wave that we did, I learned a lot. Like the prepping process, so you have to kind of like sand it down so that the paint, actually adheres to the leather, if it's leather. If it's like a rubber material, you have to apply like acetone, but not too much because you don't want to like melt away the whole sneaker. So, that's a couple hours. Then the painting, multiple layers to kind of get it nice and smooth, drying, creating the stencils that goes on the sneaker. So like, like I think I did one pair for like my uncle with kind of KP, us like looking on to kind of make sure, I didn't like mess them up. And I think it took me like 7 hours. That was my first pair though. And that was like a smooth, they were Air Force Ones, like black Air Force Ones. So it just took multiple more layers of paint. But now it probably would still take me like 7 to 8 hours to be honest. But just because you want to be very, very careful, because it's not like Photoshop, which I was so conditioned to, turning layers on and off. Working on sneakers really put me back in this space of working with my hands and like more focused in on like craft, which is something I actually kind of missed from what I was doing in high school. I have to take my time. I have to be careful. And I think just by doing that, I enjoy it a little bit more. And I just take a little bit more time and effort to be extra careful, not just because of, the idea of messing up, but it's something kind of like, I guess, almost therapeutic, you could say.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, takes the time to do it right. And when it comes down to, if you finish it in 3 hours versus 7 hours, like it's not that big of a difference, but the product comes out way better. So, and it's therapeutic, like say, so that's, yeah, super cool. So on creating the sneakers, I had another question here about the brainstorming. Kind of talked about the inspiration, but with sneakers, I'm just curious how that happens, like, and how you share that or how you experiment with that rapid prototyping.
So we use our iPads a lot for this type of process. So we'll use like Procreate. Once we get the actual model or silhouette of the sneaker that we're working with, we'll kind of take that and just mark it up. And again, knowing the material, being realistic about the mock-up, because your mock-ups can get really realistic. And again, if you send that over to a client and they're like, oh, I absolutely love this, and then you start painting on the surface, and you're like, oh, actually the paint's not holding to the surface. We really try to make sure, and this is where KP's been very, very helpful, is we really try to make sure not only are we realistic with our mock-up, but just how we showcase it to the client, because we can always mock something up, and if we go back and have something we can actually paint on to enhance it a little bit, that's better versus telling the client, oh, we can like tie-dye this whole thing and the soles and everything, it's gonna look just like this, and then you deliver it, and it doesn't. But it also helps from the perspective of before we start putting paint onto the shoe, we've got a good idea of, the stencils we need to make and what size those things need to be. And we lay all of that stuff out beforehand so that as we're working, it's not like this, okay, I painted and I got to go figure out, will the stencil work? We plan everything out the same way. If you're working on a Lego set, you open up the numbered bags, you lay everything out, either arrange it by color, you kind of look through the manual to kind of see what's what, and then you pick your pieces and you just start working.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it takes everyone has their own kind of process too with this stuff, but ultimately when sharing, I think a good lesson you're talking about is to not over promise and just to make sure, this is a conversation, this is the idea, we're staying high level, we're playing around with it, and keep them involved rather than here it is and like that's it. So really cool.
I see Kayla's in the chat. I see Kayla or KP's in the chat making jokes. Yes, I did kind of melt a shoe and I over sanded a shoe. So lesson learned, I know how to do it now. So
you got to try that, you won't know until you do it. So that makes sense. That's fun. That's cool. So also another thing we talked about brainstorming and ideas, like bouncing ideas around. So when you're making these shoes, obviously you have your partner and you, who else do you share these ideas with, or do you to get some more inspiration and feedback?
Sometimes like we made our creative circle, of folks, especially if there's a particular theme. So if this is just, like an example, but let's say a client is from like LA, and they say, I want an LA themed shoe. Well, I've never been to LA, I'm not from LA. So if I did want to lean in on the client, I could, but sometimes they're just like, this is what I want, just go do it. Then I would just kind of ask a friend who's been to LA, who's from LA, and say, hey, what's some elements, that's really has an LA vibe, that's not, too corny, but, authentic, that I want to tie into the shoe. And once they start, throwing some stuff, then, we'll kind of huddle and kind of pull from that, adding it to our mood board. And then our unofficial member of locker room is like my boyfriend. If I'm like just sitting on the computer mocking up stuff, he'll always kind of like lean over and just start, hey, what about this? Or, this looks like that. And at first I was just like, oh, would you stop? But he actually brings up some really good points, especially, if he's part of the audience that's going to be looking at that product or that shoe or just engaging with it, it's valid. And it's actually been pretty helpful. So he's kind of like my unofficial critic when it comes to some of the products that I'm bouncing ideas off of.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a really smart and good little bit of information, that not just sharing with designers, but also the audience potentially, or people that are close to you that aren't in the field or just think it's cool, or what they think about it. So definitely really valuable to get ideas. To pivot a little from the shoes, more about also the content that you're creating on your Instagram. You guys create some really cool stuff that you react to things that happen like in the now. So I'm curious about how you do that successfully without, treading into dangerous territories, or how do you make sure, you're hitting the mark?
It's so organic. And I think now that I'm like officially in that content space, I'm learning more of that every day.
Yeah.
But it's honestly where some of our best content and ideas come from. You know, sometimes we will plan ahead. Like we say, okay, the holiday's coming up, you know, what do we want to do? Especially if we're trying to tie it back into the aspect of sports or culture. And then other times it's just, you know, if we're sitting around, you know, ingesting stuff on the news that related to sports and entertainment, and just wanting to react and seeing how people engage with it, and just doing it, you know, we do. So, you know, one example, you know, it's still kind of one of my favorites, but again, going back to 2020, you know, being in the bubble, the NBA players, you know, are in Orlando and, you know, restricted, you know, their movement. And Lou Will had left the bubble, you know, came to Atlanta. And Shannon Sharp had kind of, you know, made this joke of calling him Lemon Pepper Lou. And so, you know, we were sitting around like, oh, that's so funny. That's so clever. And I'm like, you know, what if we did like an illustration of him, you know, as Lemon Pepper Lou, like a jersey with yellow and black and holding, you know, a bottle of like the lemon pepper seasoning and putting that on our Twitter. And I think it took us maybe from concept to posting, like, I don't know if it was even like 45, 30 minutes. And, you know, people were retweeting it and sharing it. It's like, ha, this is so funny. Oh my God. But some of the planned stuff we do as well, like moments we know that are coming up, we can still adjust those based on, you know, bigger things that are going around. Like one of our other favorite things to do is if we both miss on the sneaker app, or as they say, take an L, because, you know, we don't get picked for that particular release, you know, we may illustrate the sneaker instead and push it out as like a wallpaper. And it's like, hey, you know, we don't get to wear these on our feet, but that doesn't mean our phones can't have, you know, drip. So we might make a wallpaper of that sneaker that we didn't get to, you know, get to buy. And it's like just another fun way to kind of engage. It helps us grow because it's being part of something that everybody's talking about, but we've kind of uniquely incorporated our brand, you know, our identity, you know, into the space. Some are, like I said, planned, but we react based on, you know, the tone. So I think the last one we did was, I think when Coming to America 2 came out, and we wanted to do like these soccer jerseys, or we wanted to do something where like what would make the most sense. So we had a logo, but then we're like, oh, the soccer jerseys could be cool because I think either soccer playoffs or soccer was just coming back on board. So, you know, it was kind of like this overlap. And so that's just kind of another example of something that was planned, but just pivoted a little bit based on another layer that was going on in our space.
Awesome. Yeah, it kind of goes back to what you're talking about with the inspiration. Like you keep it high level and it kind of like solidifies over time, or like as you're figuring it out. So never sticking on one thing, but you have the main concepts and kind of things that piece together and come to something really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So also quickly on this section before we move to the next one, the last piece, just kind of about the communities that you are impacting. I want to talk a little bit about that and let you speak to what you've been doing with Locker Room.
Yeah, so our biggest community, like the design community that we recently started touching on, was giving back to our universities and giving back to programs in our hometown. So we've done pledges with North Carolina State, my alma mater, and their design program. So 2 scholarships and grants that they have. One for a woman named Marva Motley, who served as the assistant or associate dean of the College of Design and was kind of like this mom figure to all of these students. So we have a program at the College of Design for focus on retention for minority students and underrepresented students, and she led that program. So she was kind of like a mom to all of us. So donating to that grant, and then one in honor of Dean Marvin Malika, who passed, I think, last year, but his scholarship is focused on providing funds for those who want to go to design camp. So as a former design camper and a design camp TA, you know, it can be kind of a pricey program, but wanted to create access to programs like that for any child or any student that would want to go. And then just making sure that with our platform, we're, ever more present. There's conferences that ask, where are all the Black designers? And, with this increase of storytelling for different communities and being more authentic to those individual communities, making sure people know that we're out there, but also for those who want to get into that space, they feel well prepared to understand the aesthetics and the strategy and the tools they need to be great storytellers, and not just making stuff that looks cool, but how they could kind of approach that. So that's been one of the biggest things, is whenever we're working with and collaborating with other design teams, we're learning from each other. Like, even Terrence, he's got his platform, and, I've been able to do projects with him and collaborate with lots of different designers, really learning different things from the process. And, it's empowering because you get to create with some really amazing people, but then you're also learning, and then you're kind of showcasing, like, look at this group, and, how powerful we are and how strong we are when we work together, and we all can go out and do, even bigger things, with a bigger audience. So that's really important to us.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a really great purpose and mission, and awesome to continue learning really with peers and mentors, and you can be mentor and learn from them too, just building everything together. So really awesome stuff. Okay, cool. So in the last section, we got a little less than 10 minutes. So just briefly want to talk about self-wellness. We talked a little bit about this, the fact is that at this point, you basically have 2 jobs almost by doing your own thing. It's a lot of work. So how do you balance, that work life? So yeah, just if we want to talk about that, leading more into what you do to create that kind of work life balance, and have you ever felt too overworked, and how did you combat that?
I think the biggest thing for me is just I love all things creative. So what I've been trying to do is, in regards to like my self-care, is if I have to ever step away from my computer, because that's where I do a lot of my creating, what other things can I tap into that's going to keep me stimulated as a creative? Because I'm always wanted that, like, I call it my creative, like, hydration, stay creatively hydrated. So one of the things KP and I have been doing is cooking. So I've always loved to cook, and Kayla is learning to love to cook and like really enjoying it. So what we started doing is we subscribe to a cooking box service. So
yeah.
she's in Cincinnati, I'm in Georgia, and so we'll FaceTime each other, and as we cook, and we kind of go back and forth banter of like who's going to have the best meal, who's going to plate it the best, who's going to season it the best, and all this other stuff. And we kind of capture that, and it's just like playful content that we push out. We've also done stuff around going shopping. Like, we're both fanatics for like TJ Maxx, and just going there on a Saturday and just trying on random outfits and putting that up on our Instagram stories of just being fun and just having fun and being playful, and just showing like the power of play, and how that just kind of keeps you in a positive mindset, but also still in this space of where the world was kind of disconnected for a long time because we were all shut up inside, is we could still be connected to each other, be either because of location or distance, or just because the world is telling us we have to pause right now, but just still having that playful mentality of finding something that's gonna better us as people, but also keeps us creative, and working with a different space of like food, or it's doing the sneakers. That was something different for me. You got me with my computer, but once people start wanting to pay you for it, there's like a level of pressure. So having to kind of come back a little bit, being realistic about what you can and can't do with it. And then other times it's just literally just shutting it down and binging something on Netflix. Like, it's totally, okay. Like, I have today off, and, KP again will tease me about this. So I said, well, I'm going to work on this thing, and I'm going to like organize our libraries as I watch Netflix. Like, or you could just be still and, chill. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I could do that too. But then I have this idea, and I want to do this. Like, I have so many different things that I want to do, but they're like, there'll be time for it. It's cool. Just, step back a little bit and relax. So it's also important to have a good circle of people around you who encourage rest if you won't put it on yourself. So thanks, KP. I appreciate you.
That great advice. Yeah. Listen to your friends, you know. It's
Yeah.
good stuff. I like that too about the kind of shopping or cooking or finding, you know, separating a time away from design, especially if you have freelance, you got to step away. I agree with that too. I've been in that shoes too, just being like overworked, you start feeling stressed. You're not going to create the best work like that either. So you need to just shut down at some time. And it's important to remember that. So,
Yes.
especially with some challenging clients or demanding clients. So on that note too, I'm curious, like, how do you say you had a challenging client, you know, you got to power through it and do the quality that you need to do. How do you remedy that for the future, or how do you discuss it with that client if they come back to you and want to do some more work?
So this is like another aspect of, if you're going to freelance or just be a designer in general, like a nice skill to have is how you approach customer service. And that's for in-house or freelance. I'm sometimes I can be a pushover. I can be like too nice when it comes to like the client demands, and like he was like, hey, you know, we need to be realistic, because if you give them this much, you know, they can take advantage. So we just have to make sure we're approaching it in a smart way to where we're both learning, but we're also not, you know, burning ourselves out to meet the demands of, you know, a client that's, you know, not going to yield the best for our portfolio or our development or, you know, anything, you know, like that. So it's tough. So, you know, we always want to go back, make sure that, you know, they're happy. And we also want to make sure that we're delivering the best. But if they're not being cooperative, and then if they're not being helpful and getting to that next step or being a good team player, then it's like this, you have to cut those, you know, relationships of, you know, this isn't, you know, going to work. You know, we tried working with you on this, and this. We tried to compromise, and we've been in situations like that where we kind of over gave them what they needed, and they still didn't let up. So it's just like we end up kind of burning ourselves out, and it was like, you know, for what? So just kind of putting those parameters up front, you know, from outlining expectations, be it timelines of when you'll hear from us and when we expect to hear back from you. Because if, you know, your logo is due on Friday and we sent you drafts on Monday and you don't get back to us till Thursday, then, you know, we have guidelines for them as well. It's like, we send you this on this day, you have this long to respond. If you don't respond by this day, it pushes your deadline back, just so you know, everything's outlined, so they can't come back and say, well, you said it was going to be done this day and now it wasn't, it was late, and so I can't do XYZ. It's like we outline everything. That's
super important and challenging, of course, too, when someone's paying you to be like, you know, that's why the outline, I think, again, makes so much sense and is an important part of this process, because it gives everybody a sense of comfort and something to fall back on. You know, no one wants to be hung dry like that on Thursday night, no, to do Friday. Like, that's not going to be the best work. So yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. So we're coming to the end here. So I really appreciate everything. So I want to end on some fun questions and talk a little bit about maybe what your Legos, what collection of Legos are you working on, or what kind of stuff are you playing around with now?
Let's see. So I have, let's see. I've got, so this one I got
nice.
This was for my birthday, and I still haven't put together. My birthday was in March, and I still haven't put this together. So that might be something.
I love those sets. The sets, they have a lot of really cool ones.
Then I've got the Adidas. So I think Kayla and I both have this Adidas one that we're gonna put together. So this might be another like content thing, because it's like combining, you know, things we love, like sneakers and like building stuff. And then I've got like I think it's a Land Rover one that I got for Christmas last year. So I've got like 3 or 4 sets that I haven't even put together yet. But
so
that's kind of like
fun.
my holiday break activity, you know, Lego, Netflix, and probably just binge, you know, some stuff and catch up and just relax.
Just have a well-being, some time for yourself. I love that. That Adidas shoe too is really cool. I think the packaging is awesome. They did a great job with that. Lego's super creative. So for everyone out there, definitely check it out.
Check it out. I actually had some friends who were at Complex Con this past weekend. They were on that Lego Master show on Fox, and they got to do
awesome.
an extra large build of 2 of these. It was on our Instagram, but yeah, it's amazing. So I'm like, man, they're so cool.
That's super awesome. Wow. Well, again, thank you so much, Britt. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate your time. Love hearing about all the awesome things you can do with branding, graphic design, and the community, really make an impact and follow your passion alongside of it. So we really appreciate your time and thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Well, we appreciate you spending your lunch hour with us, and we'll post this on podcast and have a YouTube video coming up shortly. So look out for that, and we'll have our next meeting next month. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Britt.
Thanks, y'all.